All right, welcome in everybody. It's going to be episode number 21 of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. We thank y'all for tuning in with us. Monty, what's up, man? How are you, buddy?
What's going on, dude? Holy crap, we're getting closer and closer. Between our biases and these exciting big games coming up for the college football playoff and the bowl games in general. There's a lot of exciting stuff about to happen in college football. Unfortunately for all of us, the season is coming to an end. However, the show will not be coming to an end. So a lot to talk about today. Like always, obviously, this episode's a little bit different. A really exciting one, a new thing for me and Murdy here. Did a little live stream. We already recorded it. It is Thursday, December 19th, almost that time of year to hang out with your family and be around them for the holidays. But yeah, we got a really awesome episode today. I don't know, first live stream, so we'll see what y'all think about it. But what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, man, it was a good conversation. So basically, we didn't really end up touching on the Army-Navy game, but we walk y'all through the four biggest matchups, of the college football playoff. Those first round matchups, and we discussed it with our buddy Ryan Van Dever over at Hot Zone Sports. So yeah, that being said, man, we'll cut y'all straight to the interview. So here it is. Hope y'all enjoy it.
Well, let's go ahead and jump right into the episode. The first game of the weekend is going to be the number 10 Hoosiers against the number 7 Fighting Irish on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, whatever time you're in. It is the Battle of Indiana, the first ever 12-team college playoff game. So get hyped. Notre Dame is a 7.5-point favorite as of today. In case y'all didn't know, Notre Dame and Indiana do not play very often. They have only played 29 times in the history of college football. And I understand Purdue is the in-state rival for Notre Dame, but I think it's about time Indiana, with this trajectory that they are on, they need to start playing Notre Dame more frequently. You have Georgia, Georgia Tech, Florida, Florida State, North Carolina, NC State. The list goes on. Some play because of the conference, but it's pretty unusual to have two in-state Power 4 teams not play each other. I guess it happened with Texas A&M for, 13, 15 years, something like that. They have played over the course of 29 years. That this is the first time they'd met up was in 1951. And Indiana has only won 5 times in the course of those 29 years. This is the first time that they are meeting in the college football matchup since 1991, and they have not beaten Notre Dame since 1950. Yeah, where it stands right now, Notre Dame is about a touchdown favorite, like I said. But if you believe in the FPI, Notre Dame has a 71% chance of winning. And the last thing I'm going to say for this intro, if you believe in Cinderella stories, kind of like March Madness, then Indiana is your team. The kind that just came out of nowhere this season, and they didn't have the greatest schedule, but they won all the games that were put in front of them, except for that nasty game against Ohio State that everybody remembers. But kind of like TCU from a couple of years ago, they were a Cinderella. Nobody expected them to be here. If you would have drawn up any preseason rankings, you probably wouldn't have seen them on the list, but here we are. What do you say, guys?
I'll let you speak.
You want
first?
Hey, either or.
All right, you got it. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, no, so this one, obviously, I think, obviously what you were talking about, I'm surprised Notre Dame and Indiana haven't played as much, being that they're both in the state of Indiana. But, no, I mean, South Bend is going to be rocking this time around, and I think that'll be a big factor coming into this one. It could potentially be a new rivalry now that they're both – Notre Dame is pretty consistently good, and despite what the results have been in the college football playoff for them. They're pretty consistently making it. Now that it's the 12 team, and now with Coach Cignetti at Indiana, seemingly bringing Indiana towards the top, the upper echelon of the Big Ten, it could be one of those things where they consistently meet, whether it be in the playoff or just in general in the regular season and whatnot. Man, but this one, I just think with how hot Notre Dame has been after that Northern Illinois game that they lost, and seeing what Indiana did or did not do against Ohio State, they're really their main tough game, for lack of a better term. I think this game could mirror that Ohio State game, and for that, I am taking Notre Dame, and I'm taking Notre Dame to cover. I just think that, like I said, between the run game that they have with the running backs, and then that Riley Leonard at quarterback and how dynamic he is with the ball in his hand, and Marcus Freeman finally understanding how to use him, I just think their offense will be too much, and then it'll probably be one of the better, arguably you could say a better defense in Notre Dame than Ohio State is, and we saw how Indiana fared with a good defense like that, and it's another road game just like that Ohio State game. So I'm going with Notre Dame.
Yeah, I gotta disagree. All right. So one of these games, right, when I looked at them, I said, all right, one of these somebody's going to get upset, right? Like, there's going to be, odds are, the FCS playoffs went through. There was like 2 upsets, as they went through and played. I was like, well, one of these teams is going to be, somebody's going to get upset here. And when I look at it, I think Notre Dame has the potential to be upset. So that's why I had to lean into Indiana here. Now, Notre Dame is clearly the more talented team, right? Notre Dame's 10th in the talent ratings compared to Indiana's 57th. Like, this is Kurt Cignetti's first year here. But what Indiana has done well all season is they haven't beaten themselves. If you don't beat yourself and, you can play at least complementary football, I think the Notre Dame's running attack may be a point of struggle for them. Obviously matching up on that D line, and then obviously what Riley Leonard brings in the the +1 quarterback run game. But if they can scheme up something like they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. I think there's an opportunity there. Notre Dame's schedule hasn't really been a world beater. I know everybody talks about Indiana's schedule. Notre Dame's hasn't technically been a world beater all year. Their best win is debatably whether maybe the Texas A&M game early in the year, where they beat a Texas A&M team that's still trying to find itself, or perhaps the Louisville game. Until last week, until we watched the Army-Navy game, we're like, hey, Army, that was a solid freaking win. But I don't know. There's some question marks I have about whether Notre Dame can show up in this big moment. Obviously, this is a huge game for Marcus Freeman. You don't want to get bounced in the first round, and you definitely don't want to get bounced to a team that's, an in-state competitor to you. I know it's not technically really a rivalry between the two schools. It's not something that they play all the time or something that's established, but you definitely don't want to lose that in-state momentum to Indiana. So I think Indiana can play complementary football, and they can not beat themselves, not give themselves turnovers, and perhaps give them a chance to win this football game.
See, my only thing and it really sounded like you were convincing yourself to pick Notre Dame there with all the things you were talking about. Leonard.
Yeah, like I said, there's an absolute path where Notre Dame blows Indiana out. I'm not sitting here saying, hey, that's that possibility is absurd, right? Is there a possibility Indiana blows Notre Dame out? Don't think so.
My thing is, so with this game, and I'm not saying Notre Dame's going to win it all by any stretch, but I think Indiana's going to lose this game. And when I say that, this is not a knock on Indiana, because you got to remember this is Cignetti's first year as the head coach there, right? And he's made the playoff, 11-1, right? So I just don't think that there's no one on that team yet that has been in a moment like that. And if they prove me wrong, more power. It's America's team, right? So, but I just, with who Marcus Freeman is as a coach, and he's established, and he's been, whether as a head coach or not, He's been in situations like this. He has a lot of players on his team that have been in situations like this. This is a brand new feeling for Indiana, and it's not, again, nothing against him. I just think that with it being in South Bend and the dynamic offense and the players on Notre, and obviously, like you said, the talent, right, on the Notre Dame team, I just think that'll be too much. And like you said, there is a world where Notre Dame blows the doors wide open, and I'm not necessarily saying that's the case. I just see too many similarities with that Ohio State-Indiana game with this one. So
here, I'll pose a question to both y'all. Who do you think is overall a better thrower of the football between Curtis Rourke and Riley Leonard?
Well, you know my opinion on that. Obviously, Rourke.
Who do you think is a better runner of the two?
Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, whenever you have the obviously the better thrower of the football, you have the opportunity to maybe scheme some things up, maybe hit some big plays that would perhaps keep Indiana in this game. I'm not saying they're going to be out, but what I'm saying is they would be more equipped to play from behind or play one down from Notre Dame than Notre Dame would be to do the same.
Okay, so then here, let me ask you this question. So if it came down to say I'm wrong and Notre Dame doesn't cover, right? And it comes down to the fourth quarter, the end of the fourth quarter, right?
Right.
Who's the better playmaker of the two? Despite run game, despite pass game, who are you taking with 2 minutes left in this game? Curtis Rourke or Riley Leonard?
Yeah, I got to go Riley Leonard. Just kind of, he's got to been there, done that vibe to him, right?
And again, and I'm sure many people would.
Name, but he's played big games at Duke before, and man, he gives you a lot on the ground that you just that's kind of an invaluable skill, especially in college football.
And many might disagree with us. I would say Riley Leonard as well, but so Curtis Rourke actually finished, I believe, like 10th or something like that. I don't remember exactly in the Heisman race, and he had like 2 first place votes. I don't know if you saw that, but so Heisman voters might, so Heisman voters might say, well, the more dynamic is Curtis Rourke. I just think roster wise, and when it came down to it, I would definitely put the ball on Riley Leonard. But I don't think it'll get to that point.
Ryan, what says you?
All right, so my biggest thing is nobody's really talking about that Indiana's defense against Notre Dame's offense. Like, in a nutshell, these teams really want to do the same thing. The Irish are on the ball 55% of the time, and the Hoosiers give up 2.6 yards per carry. Something is going to have to give here. All right, but if you take Jeremiah Love, who is averaging 8 yards per carry, whether you win or lose this game, you're going to have to walk away as a member of the staff of Notre Dame, knowing that you gave him as much play in this game as possible. Notre Dame is going to let him cook in the pass game and the rush game. But when you think of Indiana, all the games that they have played this season, obviously that Ohio State one that I mentioned earlier, one thing you're going to take away from that Ohio State game was the very first drive that they had. They drove down the field seamlessly, and it looked like it was going to be that type of game. Obviously, the script ran out. And so you got the 15 first plays of the game. You were writing the script, and then they didn't have any answers for the rest of the game. Rourke is going to have to step up in this game. He and Surratt are going to have to get vertical and attack this Irish defense, even if they don't have the right matchups and the right schemes. That is going to have to be the only way they're going to walk out of Notre Dame Stadium with a win. They had 85 rushing yards against Ohio State. So that, as a number one, is concerning to me, especially going up against the front seven of Notre Dame. And say whatever you want about Notre Dame this season, but one consistent thing has been their front seven, and they have been spectacular most of the season. But you can't go up 7-0 against Notre Dame and have zero type of pivot points that you can use, like those first 15 plays when they played Ohio State. If you do that and you don't have any pivot points whatsoever, Notre Dame is going to choke you out the rest of the way.
Yeah, I agree with you there, 100%.
Well, it's also something we've seen. I mean, the Michigan game played very similar. It's just Michigan doesn't have the options in the offensive weaponry to be able to score a lot of points, right? That's not who Michigan's built to be.
Yeah, and I think if we want to talk about Michigan real quick, I just think it really came down to quarterback play. Because they had a roster and and Sherrod is the head coach. Schronmore, thank you.
Yeah, Schronmore.
It's one of those. But I don't want to get it wrong. But
we'll give it the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, but and I don't want to get for whoever's listening, I don't want to get stuck on I think Indiana's going to lose because of how they played against Ohio State. Not saying that. All I'm saying is that the similarities when I look at the Notre Dame game with it being home field advantage, the dynamic quarterback play, the talent, and lack thereof on the Indiana side. It just there's a lot that looks like that, which is a reason, one of the reasons why. But also, I just think how hot Notre Dame.
Yeah. I mean, we've already seen how this Hoosier teams looks against a quality Power 4 opponent when they got shellacked by Ohio State, and the Irish can bring the same kind of pressure up front. When while testing Indiana secondary with an arsenal of proven skill targets. Notre Dame has won 10 straight games since that debacle against Northern Illinois. Say whatever you want, but they've rattled off 10 straight wins, okay, and they have done it in dominant fashion. Granted, let's not talk about the schedule. We already know what it is. Army, Navy, Louisville were probably the three best teams on our schedule. And Louisville isn't anything to really talk about at this point in the season. But Indiana, I'll just say Notre Dame, they're averaging 26.3 points better than their opponents this season. And Indiana is right behind them, sitting third nationally in that category, coming out at nearly 25 points better than their competition. With that exception of the ugly loss against Ohio State, of course, the only blemish on their record, and is second in the FBS with over 43 points per game. So, saying that, my prediction is Notre Dame 28, Indiana 24.
Okay. I like that one. I can't give a score. I just think that Notre Dame will cover, but hey, could be wrong.
Do I need to give a prediction score if I'm predicting an upset?
You don't got. Well, you could just say if you were a betting man, Indiana money line, but
yeah, I guess I'd have to go Indiana money line, even though for some reason that seems almost more difficult than them covering completely. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Indiana money line there. Maybe they can score a late field goal like they did against Michigan. I don't know, but somebody's got to get upset, so I had to go with one.
Hey, if Indiana can pull this one off, I think it'll be a close game. So I'm all for it. I just don't see it. That's all.
Ryan, I guess we could probably save this conversation for a later off-season episode. But if Indiana were to win, is that a hot seat moment for Marcus Freeman, or what are we talking about? You don't think?
Absolutely not. Like, his recruiting and his transfer portal is kind of out of this world right now. The only thing, there's lots of things Notre Dame can improve on, but their NIL is one thing that they really need to improve on. They're not even in the top 25 when it comes to the NIL. Like, they fork over, I think their collective NIL is just a little over $8 million per year just for football. So it's not a lot. So that in itself is kind of concerning. And, I understand the whole academics type thing, but I've never used that as a crutch for being a fan and whatnot. But when it comes to recruiting, Marcus Freeman, he's gotten a lot better. But when it comes to games like these, you can't get boat raced. All right? It happened against Alabama. It happened against Clemson. I mean, it happened against Alabama in the BCS National Championship game.
I remember that one.
That I do too. I was arguing with sports anchors that night. So I'm not saying I had a few beers in me. I'm not saying that. It might have happened. I don't know. But this can't happen. If you want to change the narrative as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish football team who hasn't won a title in 20, 30 years, like, nobody takes you seriously anymore. In the preseason top 10, you're always there. Okay? But nobody's going to take you seriously unless you change that narrative that you won't get boat raced in important games. Like a few weeks ago, I actually looked down at the last time they actually won a great matchup in a bowl game. And it hasn't happened in a long time. Like, they faced off against Ohio State on many occasions, and they never won that game. So, I understand the narrative where college football fans are like, hey, we can't take you seriously until you beat a good team in a great bowl. Well,
I'm guilty of that.
Here you are.
100%.
Yeah. It's just they got to change the narrative. Otherwise, it's going to be the same thing every year. Notre Dame's overrated. They shouldn't be there.
Yeah. So. And that's one thing. If you listen to our show, especially early on before the season started, when we went over the preseason top 25, I mean, I had some choice words for Notre Dame. And no, it was Notre Dame, Miami, and Texas A&M. They were all preseason ranked, and I had choice words for all three of them. And it's exactly what you're saying. Until Notre Dame can show that once they get to the postseason, they can play in the postseason. It's the same thing. No offense, but Oklahoma, right? Up until that. Well,
let's pick on them while they're down.
Well, up until I was actually going to compliment them. I was going to say up until that Rose Bowl against Georgia, right? It was always like, whenever Oklahoma gets there, they play a good team, and then this happens, right? But when they played Georgia there, even though they lost, they still showed, and Georgia was a really good team that year, but it was up until that point. So same thing with Notre Dame. It's like they have to get over, especially Marcus Freeman, have to get over that hump. And I think this year, at least in this game, I think that'll happen. So.
Yeah. I completely agree. I mean, it is basically a cesspool of depression when you were a Notre Dame fan. But you have all these other universities like Alabama. I can't really say Clemson. I'm like, hey, Clemson finally got a transfer. That's nice. We'll see if Dabo Swinney wants to dive in a little bit more. But
hey, man, I mean, I'm one of those guys that I'm like, y'all screwed up, man, letting Dabo. Basically bullying Dabo into the portal, man. And once he gets into the portal, I don't know. It might be trouble. Clemson might go back to that 2016, 2017 Clemson, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, next up is number 6 Penn State against number 11 SMU. Now, that is going to be set for 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time kickoff. They're both playing in the college football playoff for the first time. The winner is going to get a trip to play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl, the quarterfinal playoff round. For that, these two are going to have to face off. Now, this game is going to be played in Beaver Stadium, and from what I'm hearing, there is going to be a whiteout. But the series history is a bit short. Their last meeting, just like the last game, was a long time ago, 1978. Penn State won that matchup 26-21. If you're all about the betting lines, the betting line is holding as a 9-point favorite for Penn State. According to DraftKings, the over-under is 54 points. And Penn State, let's see. So the Nittany Lions are going to enter this new world of the 12-team college football playoff. I don't know. This is another thing where you said on our last podcast we did together where Penn State is in like something called a pattern of consistency, right? So they are favored to win this game.
That's all you need to know. That's
Which
all you
means,
need to know, baby.
which means they're going to win this game.
Exactly.
But this is going to be all about Drew Aller. Penn State, they certainly could run through SMU's stout rushing defense, but I think this is just going to come down to I think Aller is just going to pull all the levers in this game. By announcing his return for 2025, the quarterback also announced his presence on the playoff stage. He's also grown increasingly more alpha, once again, in games that he's favored. But we saw a lot of potential. The way they ended up playing Oregon. Yeah, there were some turnovers here and there, but we really saw him kind of step up a little bit. In this game, I don't expect there to be a lot of pushback. I think it's gonna be one of those games where SMU is gonna have a real hard time against that Penn State defense. Say whatever you will about Drew Aller, and I have always been a critic about him, but because he's not always consistent. You go to last year up to now, yeah, he's grown a little bit more consistent, but if Penn State's got one thing they can rely on is that defense, man.
Yeah, so that's another so Penn State's defense is kind of their one constant throughout this year. This is another game that I made note of that I think despite it being a noon kickoff or 11 a.m. kickoff, whatever Pennsylvania time, whatever time zone they're in, I think it'll still be a huge impact, especially with it being a whiteout, and it's like I said, first playoff game ever, and they're hosting in one of the most iconic stadiums. I think that'll be a huge thing. Drew Aller definitely is the key to Penn State outside of the defense. One thing that I will say, though, about SMU, which we joke about, if Penn State is favored, they're going to win, right? If James Franklin's favored, they're going to win. But if SMU does want to pull this one off, Kevin Jennings is SMU's quarterback. I think he needs to take on the role more like a game manager for this one. Keep the ball out of Drew Aller's hands. Be able to convert on third and short, third and medium, second and long. Keep their offense off the field. Make their defense stay on the field longer, and you'll get to that fourth quarter where the defense is tired. And then once he's a game manager for 3 quarters, 3.5 quarters, turn on that playmaker that we all know he is. Be that dynamic fourth quarter guy. And between that and their run game, which their run game has kind of flown under the radar this year, they have Brashard Smith is their primary running back. He's a 1,000-yard rusher, 14 touchdowns, so they can run the ball. And Kevin Jennings is a dual threat guy. He's got over 3,000 yards passing. Control the game for 3.5 quarters. Make plays when they matter at the end, and that is, in my opinion, the keys to success for the Pony Express.
Ooh,
got that rhyme there.
That was good.
Didn't even think of that one until it just popped in my head. So props to me on that one.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you there. I think SMU's path to victory here flows through their running game. With Brashard Smith and Kevin Jennings, I believe they're going to need to have big days in the run game to be able to offset that Penn State pass rush, led by Abdul Carter, who's going to be a first-round pick at the end of this year. They really need to be able to get first, second down, consistent yards, so that way you're not in those third and longs. You're not letting those pass rushers.
If they can avoid third down in general for the most part, I think that'll be.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah. If we get 1st and 5, and then or 2nd and 5, and then a first down after that, that'd probably be the way to go. But
easier said than done.
Yeah, definitely easier said than done, especially against a Penn State defense that has been pretty stout all year. I mean, obviously, Oregon did what they did to them. Oregon's done that, when they needed to, pretty much all year, whether they were playing Ohio State, Boise State, or Penn State. Oregon has been able to put up those points when they need to. I don't think SMU is as complete a team as Oregon. I know it's crazy hot take of me there. They're not as complete a team as the number one team in the country, but I think man, I think Rhett Lashley, he can draw up some stuff. I think SMU, if they don't kill themselves early like they did in the Clemson game, that's going to be crucial. Obviously, they're not going to be able to turn the ball over and still beat this Penn State team that is more talented than them, more experienced than them, led by James Franklin. But yeah, that's kind of one of the biggest things, my matchup, and really, I'm hinging it on what Drew Aller showed versus Oregon. I haven't been too high on the Drew Aller Express. I mean, I don't think he's, even though he's returning for next year, I don't think he's probably going to be in the Heisman contention or anything like that. I know Penn State fans are going to come for me, but he's good. He's not great. But
I think
he's going to be good enough to win this game.
And I think what he's shown this year. And why? And by the way, I am going with Penn State on this one. And why I am picking them is I think Drew Aller has been more. He's been everything that James Franklin needs him to be, right? So he's not going to be a Heisman favorite at least going into next year. Obviously, he's not in the conversation this year, but he's been everything that James Franklin, for the most part, other than against Ohio State, has needed him to be. 21 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Right? It's not flashy. He's got like 2,900 yards passing. It's not the big, grandiose, stats that a quarterback should have in the upper echelon of the Big Ten, upper echelon of the Power Four conferences. However, they're sitting at 11-2. They made the Big Ten championship, arguably barely lost to the number one team in the country, right? And that's Oregon and their defense and the flaws that they showed in that game is a different conversation, but what they showed in that game and what my concern is for SMU is because of how they played in that. And Drew Aller has kind of understood his role, or James Franklin has understood Drew Aller's ceiling. And I think that if SMU can't stop that and James Franklin and that offense are allowed to do what they've been doing when they're favored in games, I think that Penn State will win this game pretty easily. And then, like I said, on top of it being in Happy Valley, whiteout, it makes more sense to go with them. So,
yeah, I think that Tyler Warren's going to have a great game. He's the MVP of this offense. I mean, obviously, the best tight end in the land won that award, but it's just really going to come down to number 44, and I think Drew Aller is going to throw it to him early and often. And SMU defensive coordinator Scott Simons is going to run into a rough time because not only do you have Warren to worry about, but you got that two-headed monster in the backfield that you got to worry about too. And yeah, I mean, I know we're not talking a lot about the SMU offense, but I don't really think that. I think Penn State is going to come up with just enough stops to win the game. I just don't see, from what I saw out of them against Clemson early and often, that was the blueprint on how to beat SMU. And I just, like, it's a great story. You come in the ACC your first season, you're not making any money off of the ACC for how well you did this season, but I just think that Cinderella story is going to come to an end in this game.
I agree, and I think that it's kind of the same thing that we mentioned about Indiana. Like, still huge accomplishment for SMU, right? Yeah. But it's one of those things. Hey, how do we build on this? And again, going back to the Indiana game, like, it's the same thing. If SMU pulls it off, hey man, more power to them. It's another one of those, like, America's team, underdog, Cinderella. But yeah, I just think when it comes down to these teams, like despite my criticism of the Big Ten, I think that a lot of those teams have too much talent, and late in the game it'll show.
Yeah, probably. This next matchup is probably one of them. It's this. All right. I'm just gonna get right into it. Number 12, Clemson against number 5, Texas. Okay. Since you fellas are from Texas, I know you're not really exactly fans of Texas, but
I know he's not.
I'm just gonna raise one question. I'm not gonna go into an introduction of the game. Everybody knows it on chalk. Texas should wipe the floor with them. Okay, Clemson. There's nothing impressive about Clemson. I haven't seen anything impressive about them all season long. Not even that championship game. Dabo Sweeney, you won the game. Congratulations, but it's just this game in particular, Texas should wipe the floor with them. But I am going to raise one question for you, and it's the question everybody wants an answer to. How long of a leash does Quinn Ewers have in this game?
I'll let Boomer Sooner answer that one first.
I think in this game he'll have plenty long of a leash, if that makes sense. I don't think Texas is going to be tested physically, at least along the trenches, by Clemson. I think they're going to be able to will their way to a win and be able to dominate in the red zone, which is where Quinn Ewers has had all his struggles, right? Like me and Monty talked about it last week on our show. Quinn Ewers, he struggles in the red zone. Texas isn't able to put up points like they weren't able to put up points against Georgia. They had all the drives. They're able to drive down the field. Field closes up. You need an elite playmaker. Quinn Ewers isn't that guy, especially against an elite defense like Georgia's, where the field's tightened. He's just not going to be able to make those plays, and you're not going to be able to use him in the +1, the +1 running game to be able to get that advantage. But on this one, I think he's got plenty long of a leash. I think Sark has proven to be loyal to him, even when the question marks have been raised and everybody's wanted to see more and more of Arch. Sark has proved that, hey, Quinn Ewers is going to be our guy. So I think he's going to finish out the season with him unless the freaking bottom falls out of it, which I just don't think Texas is going to have to rely that much on him for that not to happen, at least in this game. I'm not saying for the rest of the playoff, but for this game at least.
And I'll give you more of a number for his leash. I'll say in this game specifically, if he throws 2 interceptions in this game, there's some other issues that they got to address in Quinn Ewers. I think if he throws 2 interceptions against a Clemson team, because like you said, and I agree, they should mop the floor with Clemson because the two teams, they don't match. Like Clemson does not match up well with Texas in this game. So I will say 2 interceptions is the lead, which is a pretty long leash for as talented as Quinn Ewers is. Now, what you talked about him struggling in the red zone, I think that kind of going into the end of the season, and especially what we saw in the SEC championship, I think because of that and how good of an offensive mind Sark is, I think that you will see, assuming that Texas wins this game, I think you'll see a lot more Arch Manning in the red zone. Just in the postseason this year, and then whatever we can all have the debates in the offseason of who's going to play next year, if Quinn Ewers is going to go to the league, this and that.
We got plenty of time to talk about Nick.
Right? Yeah, we got a whole offseason to talk about that stuff. But I think
I'll sell you on the John Mateer Heisman trip whenever we get there.
I'm sure you will. But just don't be surprised if you see more Arch in the red zone. But yeah, to answer your question, I'm saying. And I do agree with you still, Murdy, that Sark is loyal to Quinn, but I think it's more of it's part loyalty, but also I think it's Sark showing that he's not going to bow down to the impatient hype of the boosters and the money and all this stuff that, because every Texas fan wants Arch now, right? Because it's the Manning, it's the next big thing, right? But a couple years ago, when Quinn Ewers came to Texas, he was the guy. He was the chosen one. He was the guy that was going to get him a national championship. Will he? Maybe. But it's Sark showing loyalty, but also showing that this is my quarterback. He's been my quarterback. I know he can win these games. So just because y'all want Arch doesn't mean I'm going to give you Arch. You'll see flashes. Like I said, don't be surprised because of Sark understanding his offense and being such a good offensive mind, knowing that Quinn just, for whatever reason, recently cannot get it done in the red zone. Who can? Which we all have slowly found out that Arch Manning is actually like the only Manning that can run the football. So don't be surprised to see him. But yeah, short answer, 2 interceptions. I don't think he'll throw them, so I think he'll be fine. But I think you start to have to address things other than just struggling against good competition. So we'll see.
So one thing I had before you go, Ryan, just a quick note. I would say it also has to deal with. You think it has to also deal with Sark understanding his locker room? Like Quinn's been there 3 years now. He's been the leader of this Texas team for that long. You maybe not want to rock the boat with something that seems to be not really falling off the rails, if that makes sense. I mean, they've lost to Georgia twice, but they haven't lost to anybody else.
Doesn't Texas have the highest odds to win the national championship?
I believe so. Ryan,
I think I saw that.
They do have the highest odds.
It's like 15% or something, but
yeah. I mean, I don't see how he's going to get Texas to win a national championship. At some point, Texas has one of the best defenses in the nation. That's obvious. They're top 5 in tackles for loss. They have a great secondary, as we saw against Georgia. Their front 7 is spectacular. But the key to this game for me is going to be watching Phil Mafah from Clemson. He is how that Clemson offense gets going. He has 214 carries, 1,106 yards this season. But I just don't know how he is going to be able to get yards. And so the game is going to come down to Cade Klubnik. And sorry, Clemson fans, I have no confidence in Klubnik whatsoever. He has not shown me anything. I don't. He's going to have a hell of a game.
Legacy game.
Yes.
To win this one.
Yeah, he's just going to have to pull out all the punches. Everything's going to have to be working. You can't have any turnovers whatsoever. You're going to have to get Mafah going, and then you can probably win. But, man, that's a lot of everything going good for one team and nothing going right for Texas. And I just don't see that happening.
Yeah, I made a note of because Cade Klubnik he's a really good player. He does more out of just Dabo's scheme. Like, he's a playmaker, right? But the problem is, and I agree with you, I don't see it happening in this game because I made a note. I said for Texas's keys to victory, get to Klubnik early, which I think Texas can and will do. And I think that they'll get to him early, whether he makes mistakes or not. I don't think he'll have a whole lot of opportunity to make plays, and I think that'll be a big factor in this one. And I think you'll see. If I were a bet man, I would say that there's going to be a lot of 3 and outs on the Clemson side.
I mean, of all the games this weekend, this is probably going to be the least competitive, and I don't know. I have one hope out of this game. Well, as a Clemson fan, for not me, but all of you out there, if you are a Clemson fan, you should hope for one thing to happen, for Clemson to get steamrolled. Because if you get steamrolled, your head coach has already dipped his little finger into that transfer portal. Is he going to dip his big toe or his entire leg up to his knee into that transfer portal after he gets steamrolled in this game? That's a question.
If he gets steamrolled in this game, he needs to go skinny dipping in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, it just with, whether you agree with the transfer portal or not, I just think if you want to be competitive in college football today, you got to have, you can limit the amount, whatever your morals say in the transfer portal. Like you can limit the amount of guys that you bring in, 5, 10, but it's what Lane Kiffin has done so well at Ole Miss, despite, what people might think of Ole Miss. And we've talked about it on our show. What did Ole Miss do? Why did Ole Miss beat Georgia this year? Well, because they went into the portal and they got a team. They built a team like Georgia. And we saw that. The D-line, the run game, the quarterback that can throw for, damn near 4,000 yards. Like, at some point, yes, unfortunately, the transfer portal's here to stay, whether they figure out a way to regulate it or not, whether you agree with it or not. Besides the point. It's here, and it's here to stay. It's not leaving.
No.
And so, are you going to, which obviously we're seeing Dabo's, right now he's got a little toenail in there. But yeah, if they get boat raced, it's, you got to be like, all right, man, hey, look, you got to start thinking about going into it, or, we got to go somewhere else. Uh-oh. Did we lose Ryan?
All right. Okay.
Yeah, almost lost it there.
It's gonna be interesting. I'm not gonna touch on the transfer portal that much, but I will say one thing. I can see there's gonna be some restrictions put on it pretty soon, because each year, like, there's only so many players that can go to different universities at this point. Because what was it? The first day it was over 500. And I think it's over 1,000 at this point. So there's going to have to be some restrictions. I understand. I'm not going to stop anybody.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you. Did you say players in the transfer portal currently? It's over 2,000 right now.
Is it 2,000?
I looked today. It's insane. But okay, I don't mean to cut you off. But
so you made my point. It's actually worse now.
Yeah.
But I understand players are wanting to get their money, and I get all that. Go get your money. But at some point, like, we've seen it. We saw it with Nick Saban. We saw it with what's his name? The offensive coordinator for Ohio State. I can't think of it right now.
Kelly.
Chip Kelly. We saw it with Chip Kelly. They don't want to deal with it anymore, and that's like Nick Saban. I'm not an Alabama fan, but I can recognize great when I see it.
Lord knows I'm not.
That killed his head coaching. Like, he did not want to have to deal with it anymore. The pay to play type thing. But I get it. Players want to get their money because you don't know if you're going to make it into the professional ranks or not. So I get all that. But there's going to have to be some kind of restrictions put on it. Like, back in the day, SMU or Marshall, when you couldn't play a true freshman, and when you transferred, you had to sit out for a year. There's no sitting now. You're immediately in there.
That's my big one. Is this sitting out? But yeah, it's like, where do you start? That's the only thing. Like, I agree with you. I believe that there will be regulations, and I believe that there should be. I don't think it should be this unrestricted free agency thing, And like you said, hey, most of them are not going to go to the league, so get your money when you can. Totally understand that.
Yeah.
However, there's gotta be. I mean, it's a free for all right now, and I won't speak on it too much either. But yeah, I think there will be, and I think there should.
Yeah, I mean, you recruit a kid out of high school, and you don't even know if he's going to stay with you for like the next year. So it's just, I don't know, recruiting is, and that's why Deion Sanders barely even recruits right now, is because he's just dipping his entire body in the transfer portal, and same with Cignetti. Like, most of these players that are on Indiana's team right now, transfer portal.
Yep.
So
gotta play the game, man.
Yeah, I mean, our next matchup is going to be number 9 Tennessee versus number 8 Ohio State. My God, I am going to lean on you because you are wearing that Tennessee hat. So the show is yours, man.
Well, yeah, it's me. So me and Murdy have been talking about this game. I think most people can agree that this is probably the biggest game of the weekend, and and I'm going to talk about this game as unbiasedly as I can, and I might slip up and say we this, we that. It's just because I'm used to it, but I'm going to try to be as unbiased as I can. But we talked about this game a lot this week. We cannot figure out who we're going with. Ohio State's obviously favored by 7.5, right? And I would say that's probably about right, with it being at the shoe and just based on how they played all year versus how Tennessee's played all year. I'll start with just what I think Ohio State's keys to the game are. For starters, if they can dominate the line of scrimmage on the offensive side, control the Tennessee D-line, and give Will Howard time to throw the ball. If they can give Will Howard time to throw the ball, that's less mistakes coming from Will Howard, and in turn being able to get to the ball to the perimeter. That would then lead to them dominating the perimeter, which is another key to their success, because Tennessee has two really good outside corners, true freshman at the nickel rover in Boo Carter, and some decent, pretty good safeties. But if they can give Will Howard time at the line of scrimmage, he won't make the mistakes. They have a way more talented perimeter than Tennessee does on defense. And then the one thing which I'm sure everyone's heard about, the home field advantage or the lack of home field advantage potentially. I'm not going to, because it's all, I don't do hypotheticals, but it sounds like there's going to be a lot of Tennessee fans there. So if they can make home field advantage a factor in that stadium and how big that stadium is, I think that'll be a problem. We've seen this year and in the past, historically with Coach Heupel, not the best on the road. Not the best on the road, especially in those big games. And so if they can make that home field environment a real home field environment for Ohio State, it'll be a problem for Tennessee, and especially with how Tennessee has struggled. I almost said we there. How Tennessee has struggled on the road, and how they've started really slow in the first half for a lot of this season. We've talked about a lot on our show how the scheme has always been there. Heupel's scheme has always been there. But the execution, especially on the road, but in general, the missed long balls by Nico, the drop balls by a lot of the receivers, the pre-snap penalties on the O-line, all that could play a factor, and this game could very well get out of hand. So that's my concern, and that's Ohio State's keys to the game. And I'll let both of y'all speak on Ohio State before I get to the Tennessee side, because I can go on forever on that side. But
damn BVS kicking in again.
You what?
Since that BVS kicking in again.
Oh, my battered ball syndrome. Hey, I haven't gotten to the Tennessee keys to the game yet. So, because there is a real world where Tennessee does take control of this team.
So. Yeah, one thing I want to point out. So at least, obviously, the spread is 7.5, depending on where you're looking.
Yeah,
the total.
I saw 7.5 on ESPN.
Total money laid so far and total percent of bets is 70% favoring Tennessee.
Well, it's the sexy pick. I mean,
yeah.
it's the one. It's the underdog. It's probably the underdog that, of all the other ones, are most likely going to win.
Right.
Unbiasedly.
Yeah. So, Ryan, how are we doing this, man? You want to break down Ohio State first, or do you want to do Tennessee, or do you just want to do the matchup itself?
Let's just do the matchup. I'll start a little bit into it right now. We saw in that Michigan-Ohio State game, Ohio State, for as soft as they are, I'm sorry, Ohio State fans. I gotta keep it real.
Hey, he said it. He said it, not me.
I'm not a hater.
He
I
said
swear
it
to you. I have no ill will, towards Ohio State fans, towards Michigan fans. I don't care for either team whatsoever, unless Michigan is playing Notre Dame. Then I might have some issues. But the bottom line is this: you brought in Chip Kelly. He's not a hard coach, all right? He's not going to add any type of hardness to your team. And then you have Ryan Day, who is known as just this finesse type of coach. He's soft. And there's a reason why he cannot beat Michigan. Michigan, for all that has been said about them all year long, if they would have actually had a quarterback that was worth a shit, they would have been able to do something. But all season long, they had a problem with their quarterback play. Okay, and then
I feel you, Michigan. I feel you.
Yeah, and then and then just to play off of that, Michigan comes into this game and says, "Okay, this is going to be our game plan. We're going to run it down your throat, and we're going to dare you to stop it." And Ohio State says, "Okay, we're going to stop it. Even though we know that we can't because we're a soft team, we're going to try to stop it." So what ended up happening in that game? Ohio State played exactly into the hands of Michigan. And if there is one way for Tennessee to win this game, that is with their running game. And say what you want, but Tennessee's running game is one of the best in the nation. And Ohio State is not going to be able to stop it unless they had some kind of miracle worker, Vince Lombardi, come back from the dead and coach this team up. They're not going to be able to stop the run whatsoever. And then you have Nico that you got to deal with. And we all know, unless you've been box score watching, we have seen what Nico has been able to do throughout the season. Yeah, there was a couple weeks there where he was a little bit stagnant, but he has continuously progressed throughout through the season. And before the season started, I thought Tennessee was going to get to a point to where they could be where they are now next season. I did not foresee them being this good this fast, but Ohio State's going to have a hell of a time defensively, and I know they are the best defense per the metrics in college football. But you're going to have a hell of a time stopping this Tennessee offense because they got weapons all over the place, and not a lot of experts, as they say, are talking about this.
You're going to make me blush, Ryan.
Oh.
I don't know if do you have anything to say about Tennessee, Murdy, before I kind of go on my short, I'll make it short, but tangent?
Yeah, sure. I'll dive in before you do, and we'll see if I hit on any things you were going to. So, it was like Ryan said, the Tennessee passing game, it hasn't not clicked all year, right? There's been you see it, you see the potential for it, and it's met with an overthrow, or it's met by a drop ball, or it's met, it's not all on Nico, it's not all on the receivers, but you see the scheme there and you see the potentials there. For this game specifically, Dylan Sampson needs to have a big day, and even me and Monty even talked about it this week. It's not something that Tennessee has done this season with Nico at all, but I think Nico is plenty good of an athlete. I think they need to utilize him in some quarterback run game. It's not really Heupel's thing to use him in that manner, but I think it's been something that Ohio State has shown that they struggle with, and being able to supplement that run game with that +1 run game, especially when you haven't even shown it on tape really throughout the year. Most of Nico's runs, most of his rushing yards this year have come from, scrambles on broken plays or something along those lines. I think that could be a real weapon for Tennessee in this game, especially when you consider him in the weather. Everybody's making a huge deal of the weather. It's supposed to be like 23 degrees on this day.
Yeah.
It's not like it's going to be a big deal. I mean, it gets cold in Tennessee. You can go snowboarding about 40 miles from Neyland. So it's not like it's unique to anybody. But I think that would be, some of the best games that Nico's performed in. It's when he's had at least 40 rushing yards in. If you look at the Alabama game, the NC State game, the Vanderbilt game, those are all games where Nico had 40-plus rushing yards. And I don't think I'm asking for a lot when I'm asking for 40 rushing yards. But I think it could be a weapon for Tennessee to be able to utilize against Ohio State. And then when I go and look at Ohio State, I think they have some issues on the offensive line. And I think that's exactly where you don't want to be facing this Tennessee defense, because that's where they're best. They have, James Pierce, who's, looking at being one of the top 5 picks in the draft. They have, pretty much a 4 deep rotation at defensive tackle that are all probably going to be or NFL guys. I'm not saying they're going to be first round picks, but they're probably all going to get drafted. Not this year, but in development years and all that stuff. And then I also think that Monty didn't really mention him, but I've been a big fan of this dude all season. Jermod McCoy playing on the outside corner for him. I think
Love that dude. Love that dude.
I think him in combination with that, Tennessee defensive line, I think he has the opportunity to probably get a pick or two off of Will Howard if they can get some pressure on him, especially with that depleted offensive line. And you do that, and you give this Tennessee team a leg up. I don't know if Ohio State's going to be able to rally back from it.
Yeah. So on the Tennessee side of things, my biggest, which I'll speak on this real quick. So the weather thing, I don't know why, but on X now, it's like Ohio State fans think Knoxville, Tennessee's in like the Caribbean. Like it's like high of 22 degrees. Like they're not ready for this weather. I'm like, it consistently snows every winter in Knoxville, and we're 4 hours away. We're 4 hours away. How different can the weather be? Like, yeah, it might get a little colder up there, but we have winters. Anyways, so the weather thing, I don't know why that's a thing. It'll be cold. It's gonna be cold for everybody. Yeah. My biggest concern, and this has been a concern all year, and we've won games and we've lost games. But when we have won these games, it's been barely, and some of them against teams we shouldn't have been that close.
Man, you deep dived into the wheel on that one.
What?
I said you deep dived into the wheel on that one.
Oh, did I say we? I didn't even see. I didn't even catch it.
It was like 7-8 times.
Well, like I said, I was going to try not to, but there's no promises. Tennessee, starting fast on offense. That's the big thing. Against Florida, that very first drive of the game, Tennessee drove down. It looked like it got to the red zone. It looked like it was going to be a dominating game. This was before we knew how good DJ Lagway was going to be with Florida and how they were going to turn it around kind of midseason. It looked like it was going to be a dominating game. Fumbled the ball in the red zone. Then the whole game, we didn't score a single point in the first half of that game. And we were just driving down that first. It's like same thing with Alabama. That Alabama game. Like if we can't start fast in this game against this Ohio State team, and Ohio State does everything that I said that they need to do, like the doors are wide open for Ohio State to do whatever the heck they want against Tennessee. So starting fast is a big one. I would love to see Tennessee go down, score on the first drive, even a field goal, preferably 7, but even a field goal. Go down, get points on the board right away. That historically has shown in Heupel's tenure at Tennessee that it's successful if Tennessee scores early on and often.
Ohio State's also shown that, they've shown the ability to give that up early. They showed it in the Penn State game and the Indiana game. Points early.
And I was going to say what Ryan said earlier about the Indiana game, them going down, and it did look like Indiana was in it to win it. But we talked about it earlier this week, Nico's legs, even though so Heupel's he loves tall, athletic quarterbacks, but he doesn't use them a ton in the run game, like a Riley Leonard. But they are capable of running. You see it in their high school games. And so he gets guys like Nico, like Hendon Hooker, those kind of guys where they can run the ball, but they don't necessarily use them like that all the time. It would be nice to see his legs work a little bit more. Just, like you said, 40, 50, 60 yards and like 200 yards in the air, right? That would be a successful game, I think, and it would go in favor of Tennessee most likely. Need Dylan Sampson over 100 yards because that means domination on the line of scrimmage on the offensive side. If we can get Dylan Sampson, if Tennessee can get Dylan Sampson 100 plus yards on the ground, that's a good game. And normally when Tennessee does that, they're successful at the end of the day. Line of scrimmage domination on both sides. Defensive line, we've seen it most games, if not all games, despite win or loss for Tennessee. If Tennessee has a domination on the defensive side of the ball, that means getting to Will Howard early and often. Will Howard likes to make mistakes when he's pressured. especially all game. Mistakes means Jermon McCoy or somebody else interception. That means turnovers. That's a good thing. And that was another thing. Turnovers on defense for Tennessee. If Tennessee can get the ball back and get the ball back in Nico's hands, Dylan Sampson's hands, and keep the ball out of Ohio State's offensive hands and minimize turnovers, another key to the game. Force 3rd and long on Ohio State. That would allow us to blitz. That would allow that domination on the line of scrimmage. That would allow the pressure against Will Howard. Force 3rd and longs consistently, especially early, but late if they need it. And then, like I said earlier, pre-snap penalties, those are drive killers for Tennessee this whole season. They've had a lot of drives killed based on pre-snap penalties, and a lot of times on the road with home field advantage stuff. Loud, and they get the false starts and stuff, so minimize those early to make sure that if hopefully we get, Tennessee gets up a couple scores, maybe 10 points, that home field advantage will be taken out of it for the most part. And then, like I said, get to Will Howard. That's the big thing. Make him make decisions faster than he's used to. So I think that's overall Tennessee's keys to the game. I still don't know who I'm going with. I have a decision on here, but what do y'all think? What do y'all think? Final score. Like, what are we? I don't even know who to pick in this one.
I'm not giving a score because.
Do you have a winner?
I do have a winner. For all the good that I said about Tennessee, I just think Ryan Day's fighting for his job. Like, if he doesn't win this game, those boosters are going to be having all of their hands on his throat. And I just think he has way too much to lose in this game. They have way too much to fight for. They're trying to go out there and to prove that, they aren't a fluke. They can win big games. But here's the thing. I know a lot about K-State, and Will Howard came from K-State. Okay, so I watched all the good, all the bad, but I will say one thing, and this goes against my pick, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it anyway. Will Howard crumbles under pressure. We saw it in the Oregon game early in the season when he had that miscue towards the end of the game. Wasn't paying attention to the clock. And, you can blame the coaches all you want, but last I checked, the players are the ones that are on the field that have to execute. Will Howard, he always seems to put himself and his team in a bad situation when it comes down to the last minutes of the game. That is what he does. So if this game is tied or Tennessee is up by 1 or 2 points in the last 2 minutes of the game, and Ohio State has to get a field goal to win the game, do not expect Will Howard to come out there and be Peyton Manning Tennessee type clutch, because that's not going to happen. I think this game is going to be the best game of the weekend, and the score is going to prove that. Yeah, I see it being a 1-possession game. I'm not going to predict the score because I will butcher the living hell out of it.
I probably won't try to do a score either, but yeah.
I tried to predict the Big Ten championship game, and, I got slammed on because Big Ten games are generally low-scoring games, and, yeah, that happened. So, I don't know. This one's probably the toughest game of the weekend to predict just because they're so evenly matched. And Heupel, for all the crazy stuff he's done over the years, his team is damn good. And It's going to be a great offense going up against a great defense. It's just going to depend how much Nico is under pressure.
Yeah.
And if they can get that run game going for Tennessee, they will win that game.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. If they can get the run game going, it'll open up a lot of lanes to throw the ball. It'll give Nico a little bit more time, because we've seen when Tennessee has struggled on the road, it's when Nico is under pressure. So kind of the same thing what I was saying about Will Howard. Likewise for Nico. Like if they can get to Nico, we've seen it this year. In the Georgia game, especially. Even in the Arkansas game, that Tennessee completely blew early on in the season. I mean, he wasn't sacked a ton, but he was pressured. And it was like this whole Stonewall thing where Tennessee could not push the ball down the field. And if Ohio State can do that, it's going to be a problem. I don't know who I'm going with.
23-20 Tennessee.
You're taking Tennessee? Okay.
I'm going 23-20
Oh,
Tennessee.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I just don't know. All right, why?
Why am I going Tennessee?
Well, yeah, why are you going Tennessee? Why are you – because normally we don't predict scores, or we rarely do on our show. So why 23-20 Tennessee?
Well, to be honest, Tennessee's offense, they haven't put up a lot of points since early on in the season. They've been right around that 30 range when they're having a good day, and then their lower ends of the 20s or the 17s whenever they're not having a good day.
Oh, okay. I was like,
uh-oh. And then, but Ohio State, whenever they've struggled, they've been right around that same mark. Outside of the Oregon game where they put up 31, the best teams Ohio State's played. Granted, we can't go down the list like you can with Tennessee of the good teams they've played, because the Big Ten, they schedule their good teams against their bad teams. That's what they do. So with Ohio State, they put up 20 on Penn State, and they put up 13 against Michigan. Yeah, or 10 against Michigan. Yeah.
Ohio State? Yeah.
Yeah. So 10 against Michigan, 20 against Penn State. I think Tennessee is, that level of defense. So I don't see Ohio State getting more than 20. But I think Tennessee with the run game, if they can, I think Heupel's going to be able to scheme some stuff up here to hopefully be able to attack this Ohio State defense.
Well, that's the thing, though. You say what you just said. You think Heupel's going to scheme it up, but can it be executed? That's the struggle we've had Tennessee's had all season.
Right, but whenever you look at these two teams, who can you? Nico, it's his first year starting. He's played in a couple of big games. Will Howard, he was okay. It's like we've watched Will Howard play lots of college football. He's never really been the guy to go win it all for him. When Ohio State fans touted, them obtaining him through the transfer portal, I was kind of a little bit suspicious about it, just because being a former Big 12 fan of a Big 12 team, I watched a lot of Will Howard, and I watched a lot of Kansas State, and that's one of the things is I just don't think he's going to be able to go win it for him, and I think this is going to be one of those games late in the fourth quarter where it's decided. And I just got to favor Tennessee in that running game, and mainly Dylan Sampson, because I think he is the most reliable option on either offense.
I think I made my decision.
Let me hear it.
So I initially wrote down Ohio State. That was my pick on my notes, right?
Let's go. I sold him.
That was my original pick. But then I looked at all the matchups, and I agree with what you said early on in this show. There's going to be an upset. I have picked every single favorite, so I might as well go with Tennessee. I'm going to go with Tennessee. I'm going to change it. It's tough. It's a tough decision. Yes, it's most places you'll find 7.5, 7-point favorite for Ohio State being the favorite. You could argue it's a pick'em game though, and for me, I'm just going to tell myself that, maybe make myself feel a little better. It is a pick'em game, and I'll go with Tennessee here. scale of 1 to 10, my confidence level, I'm going to put myself at a 1, but I'm going with Ohio State nonetheless, or excuse me, Tennessee nonetheless. See,
Ryan,
it's like
what says you, Ryan?
I think he said Ohio State.
Well, all right. Here's the thing. I watched Tennessee a lot this season, and
Greatest show on earth.
sorry.
What?
For me, like, I don't know. With that extra, what was it, 2 weeks? Actually, 3 weeks probably for Ohio State. They've had 3 weeks to plan for this college football playoff game. They got one of the best defensive coordinators in the country, Jim Knowles. You know, a lot of people know who he is, and his defensive line, he's known for creating pressure without adding blitzers. And with the defensive backfield, they can hang with any receivers in the country. But, he's going to be able to employ just about any design he wants at any moment to hassle Nico, which he's been up and down this season. Tennessee's offense I just don't know if they're built for a defense of this caliber. So I think
I will say my concern is Tennessee's O-line. I'll give you that 100%.
Specifically Javonte Spraggins.
Okay, don't get hey, don't get me started.
That's the liability right there. I saw it, and it's ever since I saw that game with him, it stuck out to me every time I watch Tennessee. He's a liability, but hey, maybe he plays the game of his life. Who knows?
I'll let y'all continue.
Sorry,
yeah. It's just that's the biggest problem. A lot of people are talking about the weather, but weather's one thing. Not being able to set the tone with your running game is quite the other. And Michigan had the blueprint for it, but I'm not 100% confident that Tennessee is going to be able to do that. And for that reason alone, I'm going to pick Ohio State. I will say 27-24.
Good score. That'll be, I think, second highest points Tennessee's given up this year behind Georgia. Georgia scored 30 twice against us, or once, excuse me. But yeah, I said us. See, I didn't even freaking catch it. Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, you said you're not. I'm not 100% confident in the pick either. I just, I kind of going back to what Murdy said earlier. Like, surely not every single home team's going to win the game this week, right? Like, there's no way you would. Think. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? But I would be totally okay with this being the one upset, of course. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm not too confident in picking Tennessee, but I do think Tennessee's a good enough team to win this game. My concern is that the O-line and just how Tennessee fares on the road under Heupel. It's just and like you said, Ryan Day, with him being on I'll say warm seat. I won't say hot seat. I'll say a warm seat. They're starting to flick the lighter underneath the seat though. And,
it's like you peed in it. It's lukewarm.
But anyways, I digress on that game. We'll see what happens. But I guess that's my.
I can't even. Oh my god, that's horrible. All right, man.
So those are the matchups, everybody.
Yeah.
So I think we all agree on which college football playoff game is most exciting. Tennessee, Ohio State. That's going to grab me. Obviously, I'm going to watch the Notre Dame Indiana game tomorrow night. And honestly, I'm not 100% confident in Notre Dame in that game either, because the most athletic team they played was a couple of weeks ago in USC. And Indiana's even more athletic than them. So, yeah, I'm not sure what the weather's supposed to be like in that game, but I predict that it's going to be cold. So I don't know. I think that game's going to come down to just who can establish the run, because both teams do like the run. You're not going to find two teams that are more similar than Indiana and Notre Dame, but I'm definitely going to be watching Ohio State, Tennessee because of one reason. If Ryan Day fails, I'm going to want to tweet everything out as much as possible because I have a certain amount of hatred for him because he's the cockiest coach I've ever seen in my life. And he shouldn't be that cocky, especially when he can't beat Notre Dame or beat Michigan to save his life.
That it makes you wonder about his job. Obviously I'm not too familiar with the Ohio State realm of fandom. I have a very close friend of mine that is an Ohio State fan. He graduated from the University of Tennessee, but is a diehard Ohio State fan. We've been giving him crap all week for that. Anyways, but through him, I get to learn a lot about Ohio State Twitter or X, and they're fairly similar to Tennessee, and it's kind of always that DEFCON 5, DEFCON 6, like Ryan Day can't beat Michigan, this and that. And so it's like, well, because a lot of Ohio State fans are saying, well, if he beats Tennessee but doesn't win a national championship, it still doesn't matter because he can't beat Michigan. So I'm like, I guess we'll see. But yeah, it makes you wonder if they end up losing this game somehow. Like I said, they're sparking the lighter underneath them. They're starting to anyway.
Yeah.
Got a different way to describe it, but hey, do you want to go into our favorite non-college football playoff bowl game?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
So, Monty, what would you go with as your favorite game that you're going to be looking out for as far as non-college football playoff bowl games?
So I had told y'all before we went live, I had mentioned about the Alabama-Michigan game and how that matchup intrigued me, and between Michigan's defensive backfield and Jalen Milroe, and if he can throw against them, and if he can, he'd have success. But I actually ended up going with the Iowa State Miami Pop-Tart Bowl. Is that yours?
Yeah, it's like we're doing an audible here.
Well, no, you could. I mean, hey, you could still pick it. I'm sorry, I didn't know you picked that game. I didn't have much on it. Just it intrigues me because of you have Iowa State's defense, right? And they have some holes in their run defense, but overall a really stout defense. And it's a Coach Matt Campbell led defense, and Iowa State's known to have that Midwest hard nosed defense. And then you got this high octane, high powered, aired out offense on the Miami side, with a Cam Ward, right, that a lot of people might have picked for their Heisman or at least top 3, top 2. And so that was my biggest thing with this matchup. And Ryan, I'll let you talk more on this game, but it really intrigued me because on the flip side, right, Miami's defense is known to give up a lot of points. Well, Iowa State's offense is not really designed to score a lot of points. They have, but when they play tough competition, they typically don't. Rocco Beck's more of a game manager. If they minimize turnovers, he has success. But when they turn the ball over, they struggle. So it's a matchup that really intrigues me, and that's why I picked it.
I mean, besides, Pop-Tarts Bowl introducing the new edible trophy, and now
with a toaster,
fully functioning toaster.
Gotta love it.
I got a couple things to say about Iowa State because I am a Big 12 guy at heart. Iowa State has a big problem, and they've been dealing with it all season long. If you can establish even a little bit of a run game, that will magnify itself throughout that game.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't stop any team that they ran across unless your name was Kansas State, and they just massively had issues with turnovers in that game. without the turnovers, they probably beat Iowa State, but I digress. That is the biggest issue with Iowa State is they cannot stop the run. And then to top it all off, they don't have a great running game themselves. You got Rocco Beck, who was back there, and in the Big 12 championship game, he was massively exposed. And in that game in particular, you saw, how Cam Skadaboo was just completely magnifying how bad their defensive rushing attack was. And the big thing with that was it was so bad that they just got absolutely steamrolled, and there was nothing they could do about it. And not to mention Arizona State's defense, they are in the Big 12, they were number 1 in sack pressures and sacks. So if you can even get any kind of pressure, now we understand they're playing Miami, one of the worst defenses in all of the FBS. I see this game as like a shootout type game. I don't see that any defense is going to really establish any kind of will here. Big 12 defenses aren't really known for having great defenses to begin with. Arizona State is about to figure that out in their next matchup next weekend. Next weekend. And so this game is really just it's probably going to be the best bowl game that's non-CFP just because of how many points are going to be scored. Now, that is saying that Cam Ward is still going to play in this game and all these players are still going to play in this game. We don't know if that's going to happen because, all of these players, especially when they are top draft picks or slotted to be top draft picks, they usually drop out. And but if it stays as is, it's gonna be a freaking ridiculous game. Plus, you'll be able to see players eat a massive Pop-Tart at the end of the game.
And pop a little Pop-Tart in the trophy, apparently.
Yeah.
All right, Murdy, what you got? Hopefully not Iowa State, Miami.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, no, I do not. First, I want to say what my least favorite one is. And I don't know whose house we need to vandalize. I don't know who's in charge of the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. But the fact that you put A&M here instead of an OU-USC matchup is beyond me, right? I mean, just think about the storylines going into it. Lincoln Riley taking on his own school.
Yeah. Would have been great PR.
Great PR. And you just freaking dropped the ball there. You had a 6-6 Oklahoma team that's garbage. You had a 6-6 USC team that's garbage. But hey, we would have all joined in on the hate to watch the trash bowl. But outside of that, one that sticks out to me, I was gonna go with the OU Navy game, but man, OU's we're kind of depleted roster right now. I don't know if you've seen how many players we got in the transfer portal, but it's getting up there quite a bit. I think we're at like 24 right now. So I had to go with, I haven't looked to see if Brady Cook's playing in this game. If he is, I think the Missouri-Iowa game in the Music City Bowl is a pretty good matchup. With Missouri being a 3-point favorite there, I think it really relies on, if Brady Cook plays, because I think if he does, they'll be able to score enough points where Iowa will obviously go in and put up, their famous 6. Or maybe they might go in there and do a goose egg. Who has any idea? But I think that's an interesting matchup just with Iowa State, how good they are defensively. That would be an interesting deal if Brady Cook decides to play, because you are going to be facing a pretty good defense. Do you want to risk that with your NFL draft stock? But I think he's pretty much enough of a Missouri guy to play in that bowl game. That's why I had to go with the Music City Bowl. But whoever, like I said, circle back to me if you're in charge of the Distribution Las Vegas Bowl, because I want to have a conversation, because you absolutely dropped the ball.
Keep in mind, I will say on that Iowa Mizzou game, you mentioned Iowa not scoring a lot of points. Keep in mind though that Iowa run game, because a lot of people forget about that. That's kind of flown under the radar this year because of it's Iowa and how boring they always have like the number one defense in the country, which I know they didn't this year, but they always have a really good defense. They're and I'll be able to tell you here in a quick second because I'm blanking on his name and I do not want to get it wrong because no one should.
It?
It's their running back,
Caleb Johnson.
Probably
1,500 yards.
Yeah,
21 touchdowns.
Yeah, so I was going to say because they've had a lot of success on the ground this year. So if Mizzou can't stop that, it could be one of those weird, call it shootout games where Mizzou just can't stop the run game. But if Brady Cook plays, they'll air it out, whatever. So you could have this weird, Brady Cook goes for, he's 28 of 38 for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then what'd you say? His name Caleb Johnson. He could, 25, 30 carries, 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. And, they're going back and forth late.
I think it'd be beneficial for Iowa if they are able to run the ball like they've apparently have all season. I'll admit I haven't watched a lot of Iowa football. That's a hand up. That's me.
I watch it in hatred because my dad's a diehard Iowa State fan. So I see a lot of Iowa stuff, but we scoff at it.
So yeah, like I said, if they are able to do that, they're able to lean on that run game. I think they would, slow the pace down. Try to limit Missouri to, bring their possessions down to like 8. Usually if you can bring them down to like an 8 possession game, I think with that Iowa defense, you got a good chance of winning that football game.
Yeah, that'll be a game to watch. I'm sure not a lot of people will watch it because of the lack of the sparks. But for the the people that hopefully listen to our show and to Ryan's show, the more than casual fan that would be a game to watch for sure.
Yeah. Stay plugged into our shows if y'all want the best insight. That's where you go. So yeah, that's about all I got on the non-college football playoff games.
Well, that is going to do it for this episode. Man, that was an hour and a talk of nothing but jam-packed college football, everything that you deserve. But before you guys...
So that was the interview with Ryan Van Dever over at Hot Zone Sports. Monty, what'd you think of that conversation we had, man?
Yeah, it was great hearing everything that he had to say about all those games and we'll hear new input, obviously, right? Being able to get out, we always encourage anybody that listens to this show to give us their take on things and talk to us about what they want us to talk about. So being able to hear somebody else's perspective live, right? That was our first live interview, live episode with somebody else and live streaming it. So it was really cool to do that. Loved his takes. Love that hey, Notre Dame fandom too on the show. that's really cool to see, and being able to talk about that matchup and the Tennessee matchup and man, the Texas like all the matchups, Penn State, everything. Really, really cool. Would love to maybe have him on our show with our listeners. That'd be really cool. So, that was fun, and I can't wait for this coming weekend. Like I said, it's December 19th. So this tomorrow, Friday, and this Saturday, man, we're gonna have a lot to talk about.
Absolutely. So until next week, y'all, we will be back with y'all. If y'all go and check out that live stream, and that's something y'all would want us to do, reach out to us. Let us know. We could try to put something together for y'all. We'll probably be doing some more content with Ryan in the future. And, man, as always, please subscribe to the channel. Follow the show on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. And as always, we are a part of the SportCoin Network. SportCoin is a new sports network that helps fans find sports content while helping content creators grow. If you're tired of listening to the same old voices on the big networks, break away from them and find a new sports content just like this podcast or the Hot Zone Sports podcast that Ryan Van Dever hosts. He is also a member of the Sport Coin Network. And, man, thank y'all for tuning in. Thank y'all for supporting the show. As always, like, subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends about it. Word of mouth is still the best way to spread the word of the show. And I hope y'all have a great week of watching college football. Until next time, we'll catch y'all. Peace.